finalizing a character design can make or break it. Today we're going to be exploring how to make a character sheet using the three most crucial things: communication, clarity, and style. After making a number of iterations of your design, experimenting with colors and other details, it is time to finalize your design. So what exactly is a character sheet? Well, character sheets are crucial for any medium, whether you're going to use your character for animation, a video game, or a comic. It is so important to get it right, because this single design is the reference you're going to use for the rest of your project. Of course you will refine it from time to time, but this will be your baseline for all that's to come. So here is how to not mess up a character sheet. Welcome to Characterized! If you've watched our other Characterized episodes, you'd know by now that we've gone through a list of stages which you can reflect back on how to make a successful character design. So for this episode, we're continuing to work on Malik. The first thing we did when making Malik's design was making sure we have the right pose. For a character sheet, you don't want a pose that covers any details for the character. While it is important to make it expressive, it is also important to make it clear, because this is a point of reference that you want to use in the long run, so you don't want to have any confusion to where some details might be. Hence why we chose a slightly angled pose, which shows the front and a bit of the side, as most concept art goes by the 3/4 pose. Another thing you want to consider is your art style. Style heavily depends on the feel you want to go for. This can either be bright and bubbly, which you may use a cartoon-like style, or for a gritty feel, you might go with something realistic. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, where you might use a cartoon style but have harsher lines to give the same gritty feel. If you choose to do this, keep in mind your demographic audience, as often we resonate more cartoon-like, softer styles with younger demographics, and more realistic and serious styles with older demographics. In the previous episodes of Characterized, we discussed shape language and their principles. When it comes to art styles, shape language is still very important, even in realistic designs. For example, Joel from The Last of Us is very square in his design, which showcases his strength and stability. And Sephiroth from Final Fantasy is very angular and sharp, which highlights his cunning edge and danger. A tip here would be to constantly draw shapes over your design to make sure you're consistent with your shape language. Otherwise, when it comes to finalizing a design, it's very easy to overcomplicate it and add way too much details than necessary. Remember from our last episodes that it's important to keep your three main characteristics very noticeable and clear within your design. Remember, clarity is key. You can continue to make them stand out in your finalized design by using contrasting colors or contrasting shapes that perhaps don't go with the rest of your design to make them stand out. If you are enjoying the process so far, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. So for Malik's design, you can see that the style has drastically changed from the original. We've gone with a more watercolor-like style to go with our project, Tainted Grace, which heavily follows the watercolor aesthetics, which you can see across our page on the Terra. So as we continued finalizing the design, it was important for us to make it as rendered as possible. Of course, you don't have to fully render yours if you don't want to, but it's always more aesthetically pleasing and looks better for your portfolio if you do. If you decide that you don't want as much detail, another way to do a better character sheet is to include more sketches, as various sketches can help boost your designs. The next part of creating a character sheet is to create a back pose for your character. This helps capture any details which you might have missed in the front-facing design. For Malik, there's not as much detail in his back, but we included it anyway, to make it look more detailed and help with future reference if needed. With the back pose, you don't have to add any detail at all. Just using flat colors is fine, as you don't want to spend too much time on this. If you are quite fast, it's always fine to render it as well if you want, but it is not needed. Another thing you might want to add in your character sheet is a close-up of any small details or embellishments. Let's say if your character had any patches on their backpack or their clothes, or if they wore a special kind of glasses, or any important patterns, as this makes sure that you'll include them for every design you do of the character, as it's a lot easier to forget when the details are smaller. These small embellishments are another great way to add more personality to your character, as well as being able to give us more context about the character's background and what their likes and dislikes are. The next part of creating a great character sheet is to include expressions of your character. Your character's personality should be influenced by their story. For Malik, we show his stoic personality through subtle expressions. The very expressive ones come from when he is doing something passionate, like fighting or leading his army. It's important to convey this intensity through your expressions. During this phase, it's important to imagine if you were your character, what face would you make while performing a certain act? A tip here would be to record yourself performing an action, and then take note of your expressions to help. As you can see, Malik does have some very exaggerated expressions, and this helps show more of your character's personality. As we mentioned before, Malik is also cynical, so it's important for us to show this through his facial expressions, where you can see sometimes he does look a bit cocky or arrogant, which is exactly what we want to display. Don't be afraid to go over the top sometimes, if it means showing your character's true colors, as this really gives us a true feel of your character and makes them more multi-dimensional, which is exactly what we want for any medium. And you want to fill your character sheet with as much expressions as you can. So finally, it's time to add your palette. To make a palette for your character, you're going to pick the main colors that you see. So for us, we picked Malik's skin tone, his main color being the sea-like teal, third color being the bright blue, and our accent color, which is the purples. Of course, we do also have gold, which is another accent color, but for the palette, this is not necessary as the gold should convey well through the material anyway, and the color of gold is pretty standard anyway. Otherwise, the palette is important to keep consistency throughout the design when we want to do illustrations or animation, or when making a 3D model of our character. So here is the final result of Malik's design. Make sure to stay tuned for the next episode of Characterized, where we will show you how to take your character sheet to the next level into an amazing illustration.